Complete streets term, okay, we're passing complete streets ordinances, then we go back and we do projects that are placemaking with, trying to revitalize our downtown areas, make safer crosswalks, wayfinding signs, make it a nice place with furnishings on the sidewalks. So we try to do design elements that make it an attractive place to walk and make it safer. We've been named a bike-friendly community. We have a non-motorized transportation network plan. So the network connectivity is really important, and that has to go into your land use plan or your master plan for your city. So it's important to do this kind of planning so that when opportunities come along with complete streets, it doesn't have to be a new neighborhood. It could be like a water and sewer project, and you're going to dig up the road. That's an opportunity to think about what kind of installations do you need a sidewalk or bike lane there. Safe Routes to School is a great program because everybody wants their kids to be safe, so it's a great conversation starter. So, good. Thanks for your time.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, Daniel.
Who's here? Who's in the house? How many architects we got? Planners? Health officials? Academics? Pleasure to be here. Talk about one of my favorite things, the confluence of place, economics, and health. In the day, before several mergers took it into larger and larger entities, it was called the AG Humco Company, and they emulsified, they hydrogenated, they elicited vegetable oils from all the soy and corn across east central Illinois and most of Indiana, and shipped via two 18-inch pipes a steady stream of vegetable oils to the plant next door, where I and my fellows crafted all manner of craft food products, including squeeze parquet, Miracle Whip, and assorted salad dressings, including ranch dressing, which today is known as fruit and vegetable delivery system. I would argue that there was nothing that mad food scientists couldn't do with that feedstock. And as we're ready to go,
Yeah.
as he pointed out a little bit later, in the early 80s, after this mountain of corn, Archer, Dane, and Midland down the road in beautiful Decatur, Illinois, crafted the other major food stock, high fructose corn syrup, which together populate about 80% of the footprint of our grocery stores. And so that is the problem. It's a combination of two things, really. Mad food scientists and oligarchical economies. Earl Butz said, among many other things, and if you don't know how Earl Butz lost his job in 5 days,
You don't read it.
John Dean, this is a little known trivia fact I just found out. John Dean, people remember John Dean? Famous for Watergate testimony that brought down President Nixon. He was a reporter at the Republican National Convention in 1976, and had an interview with Earl Butz. Nothing was off the record. You'll see what he said was what got him fired in 3 days' time. But John Dean actually came clean about 5 years ago and gave an unedited version of what he actually said, which was far worse than he was actually dismissed. But in addition to saying plant fence row to fence row, he said we're going to go big or we're going to go home. And that is precisely what American agriculture did between 1970s and the 1990s and on to this day. And I was a city of Chicago born, Western Iowa bred kid because my dad bought a farm when I was about 8 years old. And we just leased it for about the first 10 years before my dad's day job dried up and we became city farmers ourselves. But those first 10 years, we had a dairy farmer that rented the farm, and there was a group called the National Farmers Organization. The first 2 years that we rented the farm to, he and his friends poured their milk on the ground because prices were so low. And so it is with these cheap food stocks that have created industries where a few companies control enormous power and resources in this country. One milk producer today controls 70% of the market. That same producer, 90% of Michigan's fluid milk processing. Two companies control 60% of seeds worldwide. I can go category by category. I don't actually have that slide on here today. But I want to talk to you about this intersection between place and economics. And it's about democracy, it's about health. It really touches on nearly all aspects of our life. It even touches on good design and good city making. As I was listening to Ray talk, and I'm sorry I got here late, because today is one of the unhealthiest things we do at Easter Market. It's the start of tailgating season. My time at Kraft Foods prepared me well for tailgating. Doesn't it seem to you that we're always chasing the mistakes we made 50 years ago? I mean, 100 years ago, big, industrial revolution, zoning came up, helping us create these completely discombobulated, disconnected cities where everything is connected by way too much roads. And today we scramble to connect that, but the question I have on the table is, what is it we're doing today? In 50 years, people are going to be scratching their heads out. What can we do to save future generations the pain that we're having to bear because of what they did a few years back? So let us not be so arrogant in our time, looking back with such disgust, if we don't think what it is we're doing that will, give future generations a chance to laugh. The market is a great template to work from. I think if you distill downtowns down, and I come from a 30-year career in downtown development before I got to Easter Market, it really is the distillation of what a good downtown is. It's about people coming together, the crossroads of our regions, not just at the center of city, not just in the suburbs, but crossroads of the region, which is a very important social function that is all sorts of good mental health along with good physical health. And it's economic democratization, the very opposite of what I talked about with what's happening in food systems. It's a bunch of smaller merchants kind of huddled together. And it's not just food systems. Downtowns have sucked gas in this country for 30 years, just now coming out of it, mostly driven by upper floor housing because people want those environments to live in, which has nothing to do with any of those policies you talked about, but it has everything to do with people talking to each other and creating a narrative, which I think is a far stronger tool and one that we need to focus on more clearly if we want to really move change by having people vote their pocketbook. I think the change can happen quicker than 50 years. I'm very encouraged by the average 20-year-old today is 30% less likely to have a car than one generation ago. Unbelievable. Amazing. So, Detroit's Easter Market goes back to 1891, providing two principal products, good food and conviviality. And we're kind of an outlier amongst traditional public markets. The new fancy Grand Central Market in downtown LA, which was crafted from the old not-so-fancy Central Market. Kind of a bittersweet moment for me. But those are, that market, West Side Market in Cleveland, are permanent structures, great architectural statements that tend to have permanent vendors, and maybe outside in the parking lot a few seasonal vendors. Easter Market is 5 buildings spread over 6 square blocks with not one permanent vendor. Actually, we have one, I'll talk about him in a little bit. But we're transient vendors. Though we operate a number of markets, from a weekly wholesale market that connects larger growers in the region to independent grocers, to year-round Saturday market, which is kind of our most high-profile product now. It's a great urban adventure every Saturday this time of year. Attracts 30,000 to 40,000 people. It's a great celebration of good food, of people. It's really not so much about food, it's about the experience. Detroit gets dinged for being a food desert, a term I hate. But there certainly are parts of Detroit and Flint and Grand Rapids and all those poor places, be it urban or rural in the state, which can't support traditional grocery stores, that people do rely on their convenience store for everyday caloric intake, and it's wrong. But what people miss when they look at Southeast Michigan is it's probably the best independent grocers in the country. The suburbs of Detroit have places like Papa Joe's and Nino Savacio's and Joe's Produce, and the list goes on and on. Bush's Markets, Hillier's, Plum Markets. And they're our customers, of course. So that's why we still have those. that's what we did from 1891 until 1925. We were the oligarchy. We were the monopoly regional food system. 1925, on the southwest side, a rail-oriented facility opens up to accept freight from California, Florida, Texas, and now today, South America, Europe, Asia. But starting in the 1950s, those grocers built their own internal distribution channels. So the Myers and the Krogers built their regional distribution centers. And today, you have the late-coming Targets and Walmarts. And food retailing is actually the last piece of the food puzzle to centralize. Today, the largest four grocers control 50% of the market. And that's troubling. We also have started a seasonal Tuesday market. This year we started a seasonal Sunday market. We want to turn into a year-round market. I'll talk about those a little bit. The market nonprofit that I manage is relatively young. Began in 2007. Up until that time, the city of Detroit managed the market as well as owning it. They still own it. We simply manage it underneath the terms and conditions of the management agreement. Our goal is to become the most inclusive, resilient, and robust food hub, regional food hub in the United States. We chose those three characteristics very carefully, and I'll weave that through my presentation today. We're at one of those places that is at the cusp of this argument between big food and small food. So going back to robots, we go from big to gigantic, and you are industrial food, commodity food, big agriculture. And you have 97% market share. And you are organic agriculture, regional agriculture. You're at the granola pit. You have 3% market share, despite meteoric growth at farmers markets. But don't worry, you control 97% of self-righteousness. Both of these are farmers on Eastern Market. 1,500-acre row crop grower, mostly. Does a little bit of corn on the side. Biggest problem they have is immigration reform. Couldn't care less about the Farm Bill because there's so little in the Farm Bill that benefits row crop growers from a commodity crop standpoint. But they left half their cauliflower crop in the field last year because there's nobody around to pick it. These guys are in the cutting edge of urban agriculture, another term I hate. But they are urban growers and they make a living. These are the poster children. Notice the lack of obesity because they don't own a car. Their 2 acres is 1.5 miles from the market. They transport themselves, their kids, and their product to and from the market via bicycle. 12 months a year. So, it's a tough life, but they're getting by. So this is the critique you folk have of these folk. There are a number of environmental sustainability, economic viability, and social justice or equity issues. Not going to go into that minutia. If this hasn't been made available in PDF format, I'm happy to do so. But these are all serious issues, serious critiques of Big Ag. Let's not beat up Big Ag anymore than we need to. Number one, they've done 2 things really well. One is they've taken people out of agriculture and having spent enough time on a farm as a kid. I would argue that growing food is arduous work and it's not for everybody. So the fact that today 1.5% of people called farmers feed 98% of us called the rest of us is a pretty grand accomplishment. They also lowered the cost of food dramatically. 2010 census, average household American food costs, and this is a very interesting fact that doesn't get much play. Half of our food dollars are consumed inside the home, and half of our food dollars, it's nearly equal, are consumed outside the home. That contrasts well with 40 years ago. I don't know about your families growing up, but eating out was a big deal in my middle class household of John and Dorothy currently. So, where was I? And prone to get off on tangents. Low food costs. So this is the difference between a convenience store and a grocery store. Is that a grocery store, this is the product consumed that represents 80% of its square footage versus 100% square footage in typical, which way did I say? This is 100% versus 80% in grocery store. So there are people in the food access argument world, the food desert, they should argue if we just had full service grocery stores, everything would be cool. still gotta walk away from the 80% of the shit in a grocery store to get to the 20% that you should eat. And I don't know about you, but I've been in that bubble between obese and overweight because I am no better than anybody else at making those decisions. So this is not pointing fingers at anybody. Now the good news is you take all of these products, which are made from either high fructose corn syrup or the vegetable oils I talked about, you can get a completely balanced diet. Sure, the carbohydrate section tends to dominate, but if you look closely, you can see the vegetable section there represented. Salsa-like product, and if you look closer yet, you can see the dairy section there represented by the Velveeta-like product. I didn't have anything to do with Velveeta, clean up. When you don't go the next down, get a meat-like product, and you too can have a completely balanced, although nutrition-free diet. Now, I'd say that the absurdity of that is matched only by the absurdity of our friends at USDA, which recommend on one hand that we should consume 50% of our daily diet from fresh fruits and vegetables. And when they turn around to incent the production of those crops, they get the little tip of their food pyramid scheme. 0.37% of all crop subsidies go to row crops. The other 99.63% go to commodity crops. So there's a disconnect there. And so again, low food costs, high healthcare costs. I'm sure it was covered. GDP, what, 17% today? Headed toward maybe 19%. It's gone up a little bit lately. 17 to 19% of our gross national product. Healthcare costs, and we're coming in at what, 24th out of 30, 27th out of 34 of industrialized countries, and we're 54th overall in terms of life expectancy. Isn't that American healthcare? It's the greatest in the world. So there's work to do there. If we could imagine a world where we take your 97% market share down 80%, just don't freak out, and increase local content up to 20%. So a little bit more balanced system. This is the impact on economics for Detroit in very rough numbers. You create about 5,000 jobs. You create about $125 million in new household income. It's the equivalent of adding a major industry. So how do you get it? How do you grow incrementally? Because, you know, we're kind of reliant 97% on big guys. So we can't revolutionize that so much as hopefully incrementally evolutionize it. And I don't know about you, but there are two scarier things than the next storm of the century that's going to come through. The first most scary thing is how many storms of the century do we have to have every year? And how is it that people still react to all this hyperbole? You know, it seems kind of crazy to me. But if you haven't been to a Myers or a Kroger's at midnight, before the next day, when the storm of the century is supposed to come through, that's the most scary thing I've seen in food systems. Because if you go to a Myers store at midnight, there ain't nothing on the shelves. And if trucks stop running in this country, for whatever reason, in 7 days, all the shelves will be empty. So we built a fairly efficient big food system based on eliminating a lot of duplication. But that redundancy in nature is kind of rewarded sometimes by sustainability. And so the smart people at USDA, and there are many smart people there, I don't envy their job at all, they began about 10 years ago trying to figure out ways they could covertly, keeping it hidden from you people, what they could do to help these people out over here. And so the idea around regional food systems and growing farmers market has been intentional on USDA's part. A program called Know Your Farmer, Know Your Food, and an interest in regional food hubs, which is what we are about, was done with a lot of strong emotional support and very little financial support from the people. So how would you do that? How would you grow market share? And this is where the world of regional food system development is like watershed management was, it's like lead standards were, it's where downtown, this is where that 30-year, it's going to take us time to learn the trade.